Chris is coming back on deck. Welcome, Chris Vernon from sunny England. I'm assuming it's sunny England. This is Norman Kochannek here from Sydney, Australia. In fact, Coogee in Sydney, Australia. And I'm bringing together two like-minded countries. Well, at least I hope we are. Australia and England. And we're going to talk about what's on in India. Now, both our countries are either playing now or will play India, so it's going to be very relevant to the discussion. Chris Vernon, from what part of England are you from, Chris?
I'm in Kent, and I just like to say it's gloomy and it certainly isn't sunny, but you know it's winter in England. So yeah, I'm down the southeast, just outside London.
Fantastic. So, but both Chris Vernon and Norman Kochannek will be a part of the show. We've decided to call it Aussies and Poms on India, and that's our titling for the moment. We're both going to be combatants of India, of course. Well, Australia certainly are at the moment, locked in a 1-1 battle with the fourth test coming up in Brisbane, only a matter of days away on the 15th. So I've brought Chris along, and he will continue to be along, not just simply for this series ending of Australia versus India, but of course the upcoming test series between England and India, and that will be something special. And in fact, India are already talking about resting players from the fourth test on the basis or an eye on the actual test series that will happen between England and India. So that's very interesting to me. England, of course, are currently in Sri Lanka and they're playing the test. When was it again, Chris? What day was that?
Thursday, first test, I believe.
Thursday. And I think our test series, fourth test, is on the Friday, as far as I'm aware. So that's 15th. So yours is on the 14th, on the 15th. Kind of typically coinciding, I would argue. So I have 5 points that I'm going to bring up today, Chris, and we might go with those things for all our sessions if you like. First and foremost is the current series between Australia and India, which is moving into a fourth test. The Indians and Australians shifted from Sydney to Brisbane earlier today, Sydney time, and made their way to Brisbane. Despite all the COVID restrictions that Queensland's got, of course, Queenslanders are very different to New South Welshmen. We think differently, but we won't go there now. Secondly, we're going to talk about the series coming up between England and India and some of the coinciding aspects of that. The third section, which will be about, or more so, well, we're going to go into a third section about the approaches that England will have against India beyond that series. Is that right? Is that what we agreed on?
Yeah, we can chat about that if you like to.
Yeah, okay. And we'll obviously move into a banter about England and Australia coming up, and then fifth will be the Test series, the Ashes, which will come to Australia later this year.
Big one.
But I mean, this is the basis of this discussion is on India as we start now. You'll be watching the first 3 Test matches, haven't you, Chris?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, it's as I said, it's tricky with the time difference, but I'm certainly trying to watch as much as I can. I watch the highlights, and I mean, what a brilliant series it's been, hasn't it? It's I thought after the first test when India got bowled out, was it the 36 or 30 something or 40? I guess as a cricket fan, you sort of thought that it might sort of go back to the old days of sides, and the English have been certainly guilty of it. Just turn up in Australia, compete for a couple of sessions, get rolled, and then you get whitewashed. And that's sort of been a theme over the last few years. But it's good to see, and especially with Kohli going home, how Rahane has sort of inspired and got his team playing. And it's been tough with injuries. And do you think that the lack of a full crowd has impacted or had a positive effect for the Indian side?
I do think so, Chris. The reality is that when an Indian voice is heard, it's heard loud and clear. Now, they've got smaller groups of fans, but they certainly make a lot of noise in the ground. Unfortunately, which was really our third point, was about Steve Smith. I think that was one of the ones we wanted to talk about, which we'll revert to that. The whole discussion that we've had with Siraj and the like, which I think we'll revert back to that for a minute, but I think we're going to talk first about Australia-India. Okay, we're going to talk about, secondly, a bit about the England-Australian series, England-India series. We will bring up as a third point, rather than what I've mentioned about the Steve Smith incident, the fourth incident being about the racial slurs, and the fifth about the Ashes. So we'll reword that better, perhaps, and that's okay. So again, the crowd, or the lack of crowd, has actually worked in the favour of certainly the Indian fans, or they'll make a lot of noise, but it worked detrimentally, of course, in the third test in particular, with the commentary that was not exactly advantageous for Indians, that is the slurs and the commentary that came out, which is quite marred the third test, to be honest with you. And if you speak, it's quite amazing because the Cricket Australia made apologies on that. Tim Payne made apologies about his own captaincy and about the fine that he received from having a good old go at or having dissent against the umpires, and the fact that he was remiss in his keeping. And ultimately, even the likes of David Warner came out today and apologised to Siraj unreservedly, which is very nice, but I just think there's a bit of tokenism about what that's all about. I think that sort of approach is more of an afterthought rather than a reality. It should have been done on the spot, not after the performance. Yeah. Anyway, we'll go back to Smith in a minute. So just quickly on the series, you're very impressed with Rahani's approach, the way he took on this team. And quite unbelievably, the third test. What an amazing test.
Absolutely. I think even more impressive has been India's, when you think about coming to Australia, there's talk about the Ashes already over in this country. How do you win a test match series in Australia? And I think I saw Michael Vaughan or someone on Twitter talking about it. You need quick bowlers. And the fact that India have come over with, the greatest, being as polite as possible, basically Bumrah as the only recognised seamer. I know Yadav came over initially, but they've got, in terms of seamers, a lot of very young, sort of raw, inexperienced players. And to compete against Cummings, Hazelwood and Stark in 3 tests has been phenomenal, really. And it would probably be fair to say that Ashwin and Jadeja have considerably out-bowled Lyon. I think that Lyon's bowled quite well from what I've seen, but he certainly hasn't taken the wickets that he would want to or would have been expected from him. And especially a day 5 Sydney pitch. And I think on the first session, it looked a pretty flat, sort of docile wicket. But, down the years, Sydney's always been the test match where Warne and McGill played together. It was the test match where spinners would be expected to win the game on the last day. And, it was set up perfectly for Lyon to do that. And when he had Rahane caught at short leg, it was Rahane caught at short leg in the second over, you kind of thought, well, this is just going to go. He's going to take six for 50 and be test match over. But, fair play to the Indians for coming out and drawing that test. I thought it was a brilliant, batting display.
Well, Pujara, amazingly resolute. Pant took it to the Australians as he should do, and your Ben Stokes has done that in Headingley, of course, and there was similarities between the third test and Headingley quite a bit. Then amazingly, Ashwin and Vihari, both not expected to do what they did, lasted an entire session at the end of the day's play, the 5th day of a test match, and were able to not lose a wicket and keep their ends up. They actually very cleverly, one took the spinner, one took the fast bowler. Did you notice that? That Ashwin took the spinner and Vihari took the fast bowler, which was quite clever and made a lot of sense. And resolute as they are, and I think it's their mental state that's clear, and I think England need to work on this too when they come out to Australia next year. It's not about how good you are, it's that the mental state that you have, and I think Ben Stokes is the key to that. There's no doubt about that, more than anyone else on your side. Okay, so third test end of the draw. We're moving into the 4th test. Let's look at that very quickly. India are decimated with players out. We've seen that already. Today, I think I mentioned to you earlier, they've lost literally, certainly Bumrah, Vihari. They've lost, well, not Pant still in there, but barely. Saha will have to come into keep. Prithvi Shaw will have to come into play. They've lost Yadav. They've obviously lost Shami before Yadav. Now they've lost Bumrah, which is incredibly serious. Siraj is now their lead attack bowler, having not even been in the test team 3 tests ago. It's quite incredible the way that's turned out. But I actually still think with the 11 they've got, they are still a very good side, especially their top 4 batters. And that's an incredible top 4 lineup, really. What do you think?
No, I agree. I think that if you're going to lose, like Jadeja's obviously been a massive, probably without them realising, I think at the start of the series, I don't think that you tour Australia thinking you're going to play 2 spinners necessarily. And I think that if you're going to lose him or for a test match, the Gabba is possibly the one that you would. Historically, we'll pick 4 big quick bowlers and we'll just run in and bang it in back of a length and it will fly through. I think is it 1988 the last time that Australia lost a test at?
Exactly.
I was surprised, and I don't know whether it's because of COVID that the first test wasn't at the Gabba. I know the Ashes historically is always the first test there. I'm guessing to try and rattle the Poms, as it were, and slinger through Mitchell Johnson running in and bowling 100 mile an hour and just try and get the upper hand, really. And I guess I don't know what type of wicket it will be. I guess
it's bound to be fast.
Yeah, I guess from an Indian point of view, I'm guessing they're just going to look at it as a bit of nothing to lose. No one is expecting them to win. No one is expecting them to draw. So if they can go and sneak a draw, brilliant. And I think that they'll take a lot from that.
I think it's ready-made to have India come of age yet again. They did it 2 years ago by winning the series. Then backs against the wall, not expected to win. The players will be steeled by that. Rahani's calm influence over the team. It's quite uniquely special. That's what I believe. Yeah. All right. Well, thinking about time, we've gone 10 minutes already. We'll go a few more minutes, of course. Let's just cut it to chase. I was going to talk about England and India, but we'll hold back on that. Go to Steve Smith, and this incredible incident that happened during the third test. What's your take?
I like Steve Smith. I'll put it out there straight away. I think there's obviously still a big grey cloud, especially in overseas media, the English media, about the whole sandpaper gate. And I've got my personal opinion on that, whether it's shared, I don't know. I think that do I think that he intentionally did it to cheat? Probably not. Do I think that he knew what he was doing by doing it? Yes. I don't believe, I'm an opening bat. I have always opened the batting. Have I been fielding and gone and marked my guard 3 times? I don't think I've ever done that while I'm fielding. He wasn't, it was the last innings, last day. He wasn't going to have to bat again. I think that he knew what he was doing. And I think that Tim Payne came out in the media and defended him. Again, seems, why does Tim Payne need to do that? I'm fairly sure that Pant at the time was going well. They needed a wicket, and anything that you can do, as a cricketer, we've all been there, I've played league cricket, you try little things to try and rile the batsman up or try and break routine. And if Pant came and retook guard because he couldn't see it, is that something he would do at the start of every over? I don't know. But if he's done that, then that's something he's had to change in his mind, or that might just upset, might have gotten the wicket. And so I don't think that Steve Smith is a cheat. I think that things blew up in his face over Sandpaper Gate, and as I said, I've got my own opinions and views on that. But I think that he knew what he was doing to be honest.
Well, I mean, the word cheat is a matter of interpretation. The reality is, if you do something deliberately to put an opponent off when it's not necessary or not standard, that is something. It's a form of, I don't mean cheating, but it's more a matter of, it's not in the spirit of the game. And that's what we're all getting at. And doing it so blatantly and quite stupidly and unnecessarily and unacceptably is as bad as being a cheat, in my opinion. Yeah. It doesn't make it any better or worse. The word cheat is not really a word that's used in terms of cricket, really. I mean, we do have that. We've mentioned it with the Sandpaper Gate and plenty of other examples, but the reality is it shouldn't have happened. And I believe we have to come down hard. And I think Smith should have been fined. We need to set examples. And I'll make this pretty clear, and I've been pretty strong on this point. In terms of fines, in terms of a crowd members banned, or in terms of prosecutions, quite frankly, they're quite weak. A fine and a ban on a crowd member is bad, I know. But someone needs to be prosecuted at some stage as well, whether it be about something like in this realm or more so around the racism realm. We need to take a stand on occasions to actually make an example to everybody else. And I'd hate to be that first person, but someone has to happen. So in this particular case, I believe Smith should have had some sort of fine.
Do you believe that Australia tried that with the Sandpaper Gate? I personally think that as I said, I've got my views on it. We can talk about that if you like, but I think that the treatment, I think that the Australian media and the governing body and the fans, I think that it was a harsh punishment. I think especially for Smith, I think that Smith did what he thought was the honourable thing as captain and took a bullet for other teammates who were more heavily involved. Let's put it like that. And I think that he was. Do you think that you said make an example? Do you think that Sandpaper Gate they tried to do that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I think the ICC recommended punishment for what he did was 1 or 2 matches. I think if you did, Faf du Plessis did it. Obviously, you've got the classic Atherton when he rubbed dirt into the ball. You had Afridi biting the ball. Different. And I guess we could sit here to the cows come home talking about what is ball tampering and, is a Werther's original on the ball? Is that ball tampering? Stuart Broad came out after Sandpaper Gate and said, me and James Anderson and myself and Ben Stokes are reverse swingers of the cricket ball. We're pretty good at it. We went to Australia in the Ashes last year on a wet wicket at Perth. We couldn't do anything. The Australians came out and managed to do it from ball one, and they couldn't work out how it was. So the question was, he proposed, how long has that been going on, and how? And well, I'm not suggesting it had been, but
let me stop you there. It's very clear that it may have happened before, but the reality is a line's been drawn on that. And have you seen any examples of it happening since? Anywhere at all?
No, and rightly so.
Yeah. How does it affect?
Yeah, of course. I'm still sure that. I'm still sure
that'd be the way to go too. That's my thoughts. You sometimes need to be quite hard, and it's not much fun for the person that happens to, but the crowd relationships, which is our next point, I believe this should be come down hard on, because it was blatant. It was deliberate. Forget the word cheating for the moment, but it was a deliberate act. It was not a part of the game. And I don't want to see thousands of Australian kids out there ruining the guard of their teammates' opposition for that purpose. And now, I'll tell you what, it's going to happen. You and I know when something like that happens at that highest level, young kids will be doing that back at home. And I'm sure it'll happen in England, it'll happen in Australia, it may even happen in India. We don't want it to start. Let's move away from that now. Let's move to the point of, before we talk about the England-India series, let's talk about the racial slurring. We'll get straight to the point. I can't imagine Siraj would have went to an umpire for someone calling him, welcome to Australia, Siraj, welcome to Sydney, Siraj. I don't think that you or I or any player would ever go to an umpire to complain about something like that with a great deal of veracity, unless there was something wrong. And the reality was that was the third day of it. So there was if there was any evidence that happened before, whether this was light or heavy commentary that happened, the fact that he went to that trouble is serious enough for me. And again, aspect of fines, banning of those people. Now it's subject to hearsay. We don't know exactly what was said, but we in Australia, in Sydney, have CCTV. That's incredible. We can go right down to your nose hairs, and we can actually see the movements of the mouth, and they have ability to what is described as lip syncing. They can actually see what your lips are moving as. Now, from a terrorist perspective, in terms of that, they've had to bring that in. Not about something like this necessarily, but they've got the ability to know exactly what people said. So it can be just dissected, and I would imagine that that's evidence enough. Forgetting what someone else heard 5 yards away, that's where the evidence will start and finish. So anyway, I'm very strong on that. What's your thoughts?
There's no place in any not just sport. It's a massive thing, and it's been a big political debate in this country with the Black Lives Matter movement taking a knee before every Premier League game, every football game here. So it's a very topical thing to talk about in the world, isn't it? Absolutely agree with you. There's no space for it. I don't believe. I agree with you. I don't believe that Siraj would stop a Test match at the Sydney Cricket Ground in his third game without it being bad. It's not a Virat Kohli who's 100 Tests, who's a big character. Who I think that the situation must have been bad for Siraj to do that. And I saw something on social media that a fellow crowd member or someone who sat there said that nothing untoward was said, and I don't believe why, as you said, he would stop a Test match for it. I had 2 winters in Perth, and I went to the WACA, and when England and India were touring, and I know that stuff is said. Not, I never was there when anything bad was said, but banter, especially with the English Australian in the Ashes, it's trying to wind up and trying to put them off and calling them nicknames, or certainly nothing on a racial subject. But I think that that's part of heckling, but racism is just far, is way over the line, isn't it? And should never be a part. And lifetime.
Let's get factual. The first claims where the word wanker was used, the first claim with mother F was used. Now, these are pretty bad terms. But yet, even those are not severe enough, because they've been for time, they've been around forever, those terms.
Yeah.
They're not good, but they're not enough for a player to take offence to it. But if they did go into the realm of big monkey, or brown dog, which is where the severity levels went to with the discussions, then we're dealing with words that should not be used. Regardless of the Harbhajan Singh issue, which was in the reverse with Andrew Simons on the same ground, of course. I'm certain that was more to that other scale, the right-hand end of the scale, than it was to the left. I'm pretty sure, and I'm certain they didn't say welcome to Sydney Siraj. And there's one individual that the Sydney Morning Herald and I think the Herald Sun have been reporting on, and his name eludes me. I don't think it's relevant, his name, to hang their hat on one individual's comment and the claims that he was also interrogated and has all the proof, and they're claiming the whole entire article around this one person is quite unbelievable and quite outlandish to think that we're going to listen to one person's story who may or may not have been there. The reality is Siraj, the umpires, police footage, and the people in question are the ones we need to work through, not some random individual who may or may not have heard anything, who wants a bit of publicity, in my opinion. I'm quite disgusted with that. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
I think the fact that whether, I guess the whole innocent till proven guilty, I believe that it did happen 100%. I'm with you on that. The fact that a newspaper is happy to try and justify it or try and disprove it, the fact that Siraj, if he's down at fine leg or wherever he was and he feels uncomfortable, even if nothing was said, surely that's enough to say that's not good enough. Surely we have to be good enough as a society, or Sydney Cricket Ground, apart from maybe Lords, the MCG, the most famous cricket ground in the world, you've got great people, the Australian people. The fact that if he's sat there at fine leg feeling uncomfortable that something might be said or something has been suggested, surely that's too far already, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It doesn't actually come down to the term as such, whether it's misheard or the fact is we know that words can appear something that they're not, but that's also a deliberate tactic in itself. I'd argue to almost say something is as bad as saying it, because the inference is pretty obvious. So you and I are very clear on that, and I think it's a worldwide. I mean, hearing Adam Gilchrist talk, Justin Langer talk, even members of the Australian team, such as Dave Warner now, there's no doubt that there's an abhorrent work that's happened. We haven't actually found out whether it's the same group of people, but I'm hinting that it may well have been. Anyway, the point is that action should have been taken, and that's the certainty of it. All right, let's move on quickly on time. We've talked about a few things there. Just quickly on the England-India series, where are they playing? Do you have an idea where they're playing?
I don't know. I would assume that it will be at the Domain. It's an interesting series. I know that the English we've gone to Sri Lanka and rested. I think, as far as I'm aware, rested a couple of our bigger names, if that makes sense. I know Jofra Archer hasn't gone. I know that Ben Stokes hasn't gone. Possibly IPL burnout, needs some time off, keying up for the Test series in India. Interesting, you said earlier about India potentially resting some players for the Gabba with light of the England series. I think that world cricket at the moment it's all about the home series for sides. It's very difficult to win away from home, and India, when was the last time a Test match side won in India? It might, and I don't know this for sure. It might have been England in 2000. Was it 2011? I think it was 2011.
I think it was. Yeah, I think it's been a while.
So it's 9 years, and I think that England are a place now that we can. I believe that they will think they can go over and win. I think that the way the last couple of years, the pitches have gone a little bit in India. It's no longer a pick 5 spinners, open the bowling with 2 spinners, 3 days dust bowl. It seems that, especially with the likes of Bumrah, they've got a good fast bowling crop coming through. They're wanting to prepare wickets that suit their strengths. And Ashwin's a great bowler. Jadeja's obviously a great bowler, but I think that the pitches are now slightly more batter friendly, slightly more seam based, and that will suit England. We've got two of, and I'm sure the Australians will love me saying this, that 2 of the best opening bowlers of all time, and I don't think that anyone can argue with that. I'm not saying they are the best 2.
Statistically, you might be right in terms of sheer weight of wicket numbers, but
yeah,
I'm afraid I'm old enough to remember Dennis Lillee and Jeff Thompson.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying the best. I'm saying as a partnership at the moment.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. I get that, yeah.
And then you've got Jofra Archer, who, as obviously the Indians will know full well how good he is. He's been argued. I think he was Player of the Year in the IPL this year, wasn't he? I think he was MVP.
I think he was. Yeah.
So, and that Test series will come down to the batting. I think if England compete on the batting side of things, if Joe Root, if you've got the likes of Sibley and Burns, if they can knuckle in and we can put first innings runs on the board, I think that our spinners will, if they are spinning for any wickets, which they always will be on days 4 and 5, I think that we will compete. I think the last time we toured India, we lost 4-0, but we lost all 4 tosses.
Well,
And you
tosses
lose,
are extremely significant. There's
yeah.
no doubt about that.
And the good thing is, I think the way the Indian wickets have gone in the last few years is it's not as important. I think back in 2011 or 2012, 13, if you lost the toss, you pretty much lost the match. Like,
it seems to be a fair case.
That shouldn't be what Test cricket is, and I think that's why sides typically have more success in England away sides, is because the wickets, the overheads play a big role, the Duke's ball plays a big role, and the pitches aren't just going to fall apart, and it's more what it does in the air as opposed to what it does off the wicket. So it's going to be a good series, and I think that England are turning a point. I think that we are gearing up for the Ashes. I think that Broad and Anderson will be rotated around this year in line for the Ashes, and it's just going to be good to see how we go. I don't think that we're expected to win, but if we can come out with a draw or play well, then that'd be a fantastic result.
Well, seeing you've got the pseudo-New Zealand, pseudo-Australian Ben Stokes there. Where was he born again? New Zealand, wasn't he?
I think
you stole another player.
He's from Newcastle. He's a Durham boy, isn't he? He's as New
Zealand as they come, isn't he? Like
this debate has gone on for years, and when I was in Australia, who was the best player in the world at the time? Kevin Peterson. Love him or hate him, I bet every Australian would have wanted him in their Test side, and he was fantastic. He was born in South Africa. He listened to him speak. He pretty much was a South African, but he did his time. He qualified for England. Same as Jofra Archer, and his shoes on the other foot. You're always going to pick him, and he was what a player he was, and what a player Ben Stokes is.
All right, now I think we'll talk more as we go along regarding the England-India series. I think that's going to be extremely exciting. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that. Yeah. I hope to have a number of special guests, not only on this show, but in general, with the likes of Onti Panesar, Jeff Thompson, Doug Walters, bringing them all into play when it comes to the Ashes later in the year as well. And hopefully Jimmy Maxwell will come on board, and Catherine McGregor. They're the people I'm expecting to bring in. So our first episode today will be one of many with those people included. There'll be a lot more boxes on our screens.
Brilliant.
Okay. Well, then with the Ashes, I'll give you a minute. Well, no, I'll give you 30 seconds to talk about the Ashes. Who will win and why?
I think that Australia have some thoughts about their team. I think that the captaincy role and the wicket-keeping role needs to be discussed. I think that the wickets, big. I think if England can get through the Gabba without losing, I think that look at 2011. We got a draw out of that somehow when we shouldn't have done necessarily, and we won the series very comfortably. I think that Test match is massive. The Wacker, obviously not at the Wacker anymore. Will that play a role? That was a stronghold of Australia for 30, 40 years. We literally could never get close at the Wacker. Now it's the Optus Stadium. I don't know if the pitch is the same. I don't know how much of an impact that will be.
It's a drop-in pitch, actually. So
I think that it will be a good series. I think that Australia are going to be favourites, and rightly so. If Jofra Archer and Mark Wood turn up, we've got every chance, because now we've got two blokes that can bowl 90 mile an hour past your face, and that's key. So I think that Australia need to think about their side. This Pachowski, have I pronounced that right?
Yeah.
Bukowski, sorry. I think he looks a very promising talent. I think that his concussion record is a worry. The greatest will in the world. If you've been hit on the head 5 or 6 times in state cricket, what's the first thing people are going to do when you turn up at Test cricket? They're going to bounce you, rightly or wrongly. I know that it's obviously with what happened with Phil Hughes and everything for the Australians, it's not a nice topic to talk about, but that's what happens at Test cricket. And we saw Steve Smith over here last year at Lords with Jofra Archer. It's going to be fierce, and they're going to try and rattle them. And
so, okay, end it with who's going to win?
2-2.
Okay. All right. I think I'll say Australia 3-1. And I think India 4-1 if it's a 5-test series. I'm not sure what you're playing there in India, but we'll find out. So, all right, look, I might wrap it up. We're coming close up to a 30-minute mark. I think it's been a great discussion, Chris, especially for our first discussion. Australia, India, 4th test. Winner will be?
Australia.
Okay. You know what?
I think if it wasn't really, do you think they've got the bowling to do it?
I think it's all about what's up here. India showed if Tim Payne continues to be captain the last match, which Buriya Majumdar from Sports Today actually messaged me earlier today thinking the actual press conference that he had this morning where he apologised profusely, we both thought that he might be resigning from Test captaincy, but he didn't do that. So it's interesting. I actually think the mental side of it is where India might actually win out. They've actually just won a Test through a draw in a manner that never has been seen. I can't remember last time a 5-day Test at the SCG, let alone a draw in that manner. With only lost 3 wickets. So I actually think backs against the wall, India's toughness may come to the fore, and Australia may be expecting to win. And if they've not captained properly or led well, that could well go against them. So we'll see. You've said Australia, I've said India. We'll see what happens in a few weeks' time.
I think the strength of Australian cricket in the last 30 years in my lifetime has always been, and something that the English have not done well, is that we, in my opinion, England often picked a captain and then picked a side, whereas Australia was pick your strongest side and pick a captain in that side. And am I sat here, do Australians, and I think that I know the answer to this following social media, do Australia really think that Tim Payne is in their best cricket 11? Is he your best keeper? He's a good keeper. He's got no Test hundreds as a keeper bat. And look at the Gilchrist, look at Pryor, look at Boucher. Boucher not as much as those guys. Pant now, you've got to be able to bat. And he's turning around to Ravi Ashwin and giving him stick. The guy's a frontline spin bowler with 4 Test hundreds. You've got no Test hundreds. It's a bit.
He did score 70. Was it in the first Test? I think it was the first Test he scored 70, which was an important 70. But I do take your point. We need more of a dynamic batter who keeps.
Do you think that Steve Smith could come back as captain?
What other choice have we got?
Well, it's Steve.
Travis Head's not the choice. Warner obviously won't. He can't.
Good.
That leaves, Pekowski?
Well, Cummings is the talk, isn't he? I don't think that.
Yeah, but that's incredibly unusual for us to be having a fast bowler as our captain. Any side is very rarely the case. Yeah. And you could argue that James Andersons could have captained your side at stages. I'm not sure that he himself, but yeah, that's not going to happen. I think we could revert to Steve Smith. If he stops scratching the middle of the wicket, we might be in a better position. But he needs to wake up to himself a bit. I'm quite disappointed with everything. His batting's been fantastic. He scored, I think it was 91 and 70 or something in this last Test. To me, anyway, he probably would be the right captain, but we'll wait and see. All right, Chris, I'm going to end it here.
Perfect.
This has been fantastic. We've covered the 5 points we expected, if not a bit more. This has been fantastic. We'll be posting this on My Eyes on Cricket channel with Norman Kochannek. We have a great deal to talk about with India. We'll have to talk more about India because there's a lot to talk about with India. So we're ordaining this an Aussie and a Pom on India for this episode. We'll see how we go for the next. So thanks for your time, Chris. And all those that are watching this, please make as many comments as you want. Bag the Poms. Say highly about India and not so bad about Australia. Would you mind? No. So look, I'm enjoying this greatly. I think we'll expand this to a larger group of attendees, but it's a great way to start. So thank you for your time, Chris. I'll actually stop now and talk to you very soon.
Brilliant. I'm looking forward to it. See you next time.